Hi yogis, my name is Nicholas. We're going to be doing a beginner breakdown of certain poses. This is going to be a part 1 of potentially a part 2 and 3 series. And so in this episode, we're going to focus on the downward dog, a very common pose, a pose we use for transitioning between our sequences or our flow in yoga. And then we're going to go into a plank, as well as taking you through the Vinyasa. So what a Chaturanga looks like, some tips and prompts on a Chaturanga, an upward dog, and then transitioning from there into your downward dog. And then we'll probably also touch on a little halfway lift, just a little tip on one's halfway lift. And yeah, so from there we can begin finding our way into a tabletop position. So we're going to find almost on a hands and knees position with the shoulders above the wrists and your hips above your knees. From there, you can initially just look at me for now, and then we'll get on the mat yourself or practice this yourself. So initially, we're going to lift up off the knees, and we want to almost focus on creating this triangular shape with the body. So we're focusing on lifting up through the hips, taking your hips back. You'll notice I'm trying to create almost like a diagonal line running from the hands up through the spine, up to the tailbone or to the hips. All right. Often I find people or my students in this position, you're almost in like a halfway between a plank and a downward dog. You'll notice your shoulders are above your wrists, which we don't necessarily want to be in. We want to be working the hips back, drawing the chest and the shoulders down, almost towards the toes or the thighs. And then from here, pressing your feet into the mat, elevating up through the hips. You can always have a little bend in your knees as much as you like, just to find yourself here. All right. So maybe just another starting point. We can almost start in this position where we're sitting the hips back initially. So we're creating that diagonal line with the arms. And then from there, we're pressing into the feet, lifting up through our hips. And then with time or with practice, you can find to what extent you want to be drawing your heels down towards the mat. And then from here, we are widening our fingertips and pressing our palms, our hands into the mat, lengthening through our arms. Good. And then from there, you can practice this yourself, giving it a little go. You can always rewind the video, of course. And keep practicing from there. Seeing how long you can maybe hold and breathe there for a few moments, take a little break, and keep practicing. All right, from there, we're going to work into a plank. So often in yoga, we might transition from our plank. We want to ideally find the shoulders above the wrists or the hands. And we are trying to elevate our hips in line with the rib cage. Often I see people or students with their spine quite arched, the hips are almost sinking, or even a little bit too high, almost once again in between like a plank and a downward dog. So we are trying to work into this nicely balanced, nicely stable position, drawing the shoulders above the hands and the hips in line with your rib cage. And then from here, one final little tip, we can focus on pressing our hands into the mat. So we're focusing on lengthening through the arms, rounding through the top of the back, opening up through the shoulder blades. So we don't want to be almost hunched or arced in with the shoulder blades. We want to be actively rounding through, creating that space between the shoulder blades. All right. So yeah, once again, finding yourself just following those prompts, you'll find yourself in a nice, strong plank in the ideal alignment. All right. So then from there, we're going to work into a little Vinyasa flow. So generally from our plank, we'll be finding ourselves into a Chaturanga position. maybe I'll demonstrate the Vinyasa initially. So the Vinyasa is normally like a flow that we take, making our way either to our downward dog. Generally, it is to our downward dog. And that can look pretty much like anything. The more traditional flow is working from our kind of semi-plank or from our plank position down into Chaturanga, pressing up into our upward dog, and then working our way to our downward dog. And that can look like anything. It can look from going from a plank to dropping the knees down into a child's pose and working your way up from there into downward dog. So you can very much make it your own. I'm just going to show you the more kind of common or most practice variation of that vinyasa that we'll take when we transition towards our downward dog. All right. So focusing on the chaturanga initially, which is almost like a push-up essentially, or more like a lower down from a push-up. So once again, we're finding that nice, stable, strong position in our plank like we focused on earlier. From there, we're shifting our weight forward, bending the elbows. We want to keep the elbows drawn in and tucked in towards the rib cage. We don't want them flaring out. So bringing that as your first prompt to remember. At any point, whether it's your plank, your chaturanga, or your vinyasa, at any point you want to drop down to your knees in a more supported variation, you can always do that. Okay? So finding our chaturanga, we're keeping the elbows drawn in towards the rib cage. Your shoulders are relatively in line with your elbows. And this is pretty much your chaturanga. All right. From there, we're going to work up into an upward dog. Your more kind of beginner variation, we can drop the knees down. I'm focusing on almost drawing the pelvis down. I'm pressing my hands into the mat, lengthening through the arms, drawing the shoulders down, lengthening through the spine and neck. You can take your gaze forward a touch, and you are activating your legs, you're squeezing the glutes, keeping your lower back muscles engaged. Now, the one up from that variation is basically finding your way up onto the tops of your feet for that upward dog. So it will look something more like this. You'll notice only my hands and my feet are touching the mat. So feeling into what variation you want to work into. So maybe we piece that together for now. So once again, we're going from our plank. We can also move a little bit with our breath, a little bit more now. So we're breathing into our plank. On your exhale, chaturanga, maybe holding for a moment. Inhale, either dropping the knees down into that upward dog or coming off the knee, and then lifting up through the hips, untucking the toes, or rather tucking the toes and working in to your downward dog, which we've already touched on. All right, and that's pretty much your vinyasa that you'll be taking. Maybe I'll show a little example of what they can look more like from a crescent lunge position, working in towards your downward dog. But maybe we just all do that together, practicing one more time, something a little bit more fluid. So we're breathing in to our plank, exhaling into chaturanga, inhaling, upward dog, exhaling into downward dog. Good. And then from there, we can maybe walk our feet forward to the front of the mat. And we can go for a little halfway lift. This is something you'll often hear in a class as well. We're breathing in for a little halfway lift and then exhaling, folding forward and down. Just a little pointer on the halfway lift. We almost want to focus on finding some length and lift in the chest, as well as tilting the pelvis backwards. So we're trying to avoid being in this rounded position and finding that length and that tilt with the tailbone or pelvis. And then on that forward fold, we're rounding through and exhaling, relaxing your head. Folding forward and down. Good. And let's repeat that. So we're breathing in lifting up, exhaling, folding forward and down. And at this point, at any point really, in any forward fold, you can have your legs bent as much as you need to. Pretty much at no point throughout any pose do you have to have perfectly straight legs. So you can always have a little bend to whatever feels comfortable for you. All right, maybe we piece that together with a little crescent lunge. Seeing that we're working on our vinyasa, we can maybe step the left foot forward, find a little bend in that left leg. We can take the arms up. It's up to you to how wide of a stance you want to be taking with your legs. You know, the closer together your legs or your stance, the kind of less strenuous the pose is going to be on your legs, as well as on your balance and strengthening. The wider your stance, the deeper you're going to be working. All right, from here, let's try and piece together that vinyasa. So we're breathing in, we're reaching up through the arms. On your exhale, we're taking the arms down or the hands down, stepping that left foot back. On that same exhale, if you can, into that Chaturanga, into that upward dog, either dropping the knees or staying on the feet. And then exhale, working into a downward dog. Yeah, good. I mean, that's pretty much all that I wanted to put together for you in this part one for the beginner breakdown. Feel free to watch it and practice it as much as you need to. And yeah, it'll come into handy for our future classes together. Until then, take it easy.